So hello attendees, and welcome to the Deep Space Food Challenge launch webinar. This exceptional call for innovation reminds us all that there is so much to look forward to, a future of new technologies and new ways to grow our food and our society. This ambitious collaboration between the Canadian Space Agency, Zone Agtech, and Bioenterprise is ready to show Canadian leadership on a global stage and to benefit the world's food and agritech economy as a result. With that in mind, we are here to tell you what this program is, what it means for Canada and the future of food, and how to get involved. You may have seen some information, even a webinar from NASA and the CSA, but today we're going to focus on Canadian technology and how the Great North's infrastructure is here to support you in this challenge. All right, so hop over first. Let me introduce myself. I am Aaron Meisner, Strategic Communications Manager at Bioenterprise. My role here is largely outbound communications and occasionally using my face and skill and oration to represent the organization on webinars. So today I'll be primarily introducing and moderating. However, the rest of the expertise, that's all to follow. I am joined by Olivier Dumaire, a Senior Innovation Advisor from our partner organization, Zone Agtech. Olivier will be helping to moderate questions and also speaking to Zone Agtech's role in making this challenge a deeply impactful initiative. Below each of our pictures and of all the presenters today, you'll notice a unique food item. These foods are the ones that our presenters would most like to see travel to space with them. And it's meant to demonstrate the diversity of food preferences, but also our own innovation of appetite. So enjoy seeing what each of us would like to bring with us out into outer space. All right, so we'll begin here by doing some house rules. That way you can all interact with us and follow along. There will, of course, be a few more introductions, those experts I alluded to earlier, and then we'll get right into the meat of today's topic. You know, what is the challenge? How do I get involved? What are my next steps? And finally, at the end, lots of time for the many questions I'm sure you'll all have. All right. So we encourage everyone to participate actively by posting questions in the chat box during the webinar. We ask that you remain muted for the duration of the webinar, including Q&A, so that we can better direct the flow of conversation to our experts. All inquiries should be made via the chat. To access the chat function, you select the Zoom window and click on the speech bubble icon. As noted, I will address these as best I can given the flow of information. If there's a chance to address it immediately, I can raise it with the speakers. If not, we may table it until the end of the presentation. Any questions not immediately addressed or covered in the ending Q&A will be answered in writing. So don't worry, we are here to give you what you need to engage meaningfully in this challenge. There are also some email addresses you can direct any questions to as well. You should see those on screen. If they're more involved or regarding specifics on solutions or team eligibility, we're not going to cover those today. Mostly we're covering general inquiries. Finally, I'd like to note that this recording will be made available on Impact Canada's website. So if you feel like you missed something, don't worry, it's not gone forever. You just head on over to their site and you can access it via the Canadian Space Challenge page once it's up. Now I'm going to make some quick introductions to our CSA team. Admittedly, I wish I could speak to their expertise more significantly, but I'm just a words guy. But let me tell you about some of these amazing professionals with equally amazing job titles. Seriously, having space exploration on a business card, that's like the realization of every adventurer's childhood dreams. So with us today, we have Clélia Cotier, Challenge Prize Fellow, Impact and Innovation Unit from CSA, representing also the Privy Council Office and Impact Canada. We've got Matthew Bamsey, a Senior Engineer of Exploration, Strategic Planning and Space Exploration from the CSA, and Mathieu Tremblay, an Exploration Scientist, Exploration, Strategic Planning and Space Exploration, also from the CSA. I hope that they can speak a bit more to their roles in the project, and I'll turn it over to Clélia now to dive into the heart of our content here today. So over to you, Clélia.
Thank you, Aaron. So I'm here today as an Impact Canada Fellow. So I work for the Privy Council Office and with the Canadian Space Agency as a challenge manager. So before we dive into the technical details of the challenge, we'd like to give you a little peek behind the curtains and recognize the unique collaboration that made this challenge a reality. So as we look back at the history of space exploration, international collaborations have really been key. And in the same way, the Deep Space Food Challenge is a collaborative effort between NASA and the Canadian Space Agency in support of space policies, both the United States government and of the Canadian government. Next slide, please. So NASA and the Canadian Space Agency have come together around this important topic of food for both space exploration missions and potential impacts here on Earth. Our two agencies are running parallel competitions, and this chart shows where we overlap and where we're operating independently. So NASA and CSA have a shared design, which includes the challenge statement, the goals, the assessment criteria, and we operate differently on the prizes, which are handled separately between NASA and CSA for their respective applicants. We have separate rules. For us, it's the applicant guide, and NASA has the rules document, and we have distinct eligibility criteria. It's also important to note that CSA has no responsibility in the NASA-led challenge and vice versa. Next slide, please. So on the Canadian side, the challenge organizers are the Canadian Space Agency, which is a challenge owner, and working closely with the Privy Council's office, Impact Canada, which I'll get back to in a second. And we're working closely with Zone Agtech and Bioenterprise to ensure that the challenge is promoted to Canadians and reaching as far as possible within the different provinces. They're also supporting competitor outreach and creating networking opportunities for you to connect with other like-minded innovators. Next slide, please. So a little more about Impact Canada, because CSA is not doing this alone, and this challenge is CSA's first challenge. So we've decided to work closely with Impact Canada, which has the experience in running challenges with various departments across the Government of Canada. CSA is relying on Impact Canada's expertise, methodologies, and the platform to run this challenge. Impact Canada has a hub to support the departments with this center of expertise, and the platform, which you've probably seen, is a complete online infrastructure to run challenges, which you might discover as if and as you become semi-finalists or finalists. Impact Canada is an initiative of the Impact and Innovation Unit, which is housed in the Privy Council office. And the Privy Council office is one of the central agencies of the federal government. The IIU, so the Impact and Innovation Unit, was established to drive public sector innovation by supporting implementation of high priority policies, programs, and services that are designed to improve outcomes for citizens. And since it was created about 4 years ago, Impact Canada has tested new approaches to really help optimize the government policies. And some of these approaches include behavioral science, innovative finance, impact measurement, and challenge prizes. So we're really glad with the Canadian Space Agency to be working closely with Impact Canada. But now to tell you a bit more about the Space Agency and space exploration, I'm going to pass it on to Matt.
Thanks, Chloe. Yeah, good to see some familiar faces around the table today. Just to provide some background on the Canadian Space Agency, because some of you may not necessarily be necessarily interacting with the space sector as much. This gives you a little bit of feedback as to where the Space Agency's program with respect to space exploration is headed. So overall, the mandate of the Canadian Space Agency, as you see, is to promote the peaceful use and development of space, to advance the knowledge of space through science, and to ensure that space science and technology provide social and economic benefits to Canadians. And this is exactly what we're focused on with respect to the challenge as well, is that interface between the space and terrestrial sector. That's very apparent in the CSA's Earth observation program, which is using satellite data, for example, for agriculture. And so there is some interaction with the ag tech sector and Earth observation. But on the space exploration side, and this is where the Deep Space Food Challenge really comes in, is indeed how we can support our astronauts on some of these long duration missions. So the CSA does have an active space exploration program. It focuses on 3 main themes: planetary science, space astronomy, and human spaceflight. And so if we discuss a few of the sample sort of Canadian activities from that regard, CSA is active in various Mars missions, but there's a lot of excitement around Mars these days with respect to the 3 international missions that arrived there over the past few weeks. And of course, Perseverance that landed a few days ago. the Lunar Exploration Accelerator Program was announced in 2019, and we'll talk about the space strategy a little bit, and that's focused very much on conducting science and technology demonstration missions at the moon. James Webb Space Telescope is, of course, an exciting upcoming space astronomy mission. We have the International Space Station. We have our astronauts flying to the station from time to time as well. And another element of the 2019 space strategy is Gateway, and how Canada will be developing a critical system, Canadarm3 for Gateway, which will also subsequently allow our astronauts, as some of you may know, to fly to the moon. And there's, of course, the exciting announcement of Artemis 2 a few weeks ago as well. Next slide, please. So with respect specifically to food production, so the 2019 space strategy is a Government of Canada-wide space strategy, but we were very fortunate to have a call out there, this paragraph at the top, which is harnessing space to solve everyday challenges for Canadians, specifically focusing on deep space healthcare and food production. And on the food production side, really, it's essentially focusing on how the Government of Canada, and in this case, CSA is taking on some of this, as well as you'll hear from some of our expert partners in the question period, but focusing on helping improve the accessibility of food across Canada, including the North, with the aim of one day taking these lessons learned to help astronauts grow food off Earth. And so the Deep Space Food Challenge is one of the elements of our Building Food Production Initiative. At the bottom of the slide, you can see an early vision statement for this initiative, which is by the mid-2030s, Canada will have sought after food production capabilities for long duration human spaceflight and provide one or several critical systems to an international partner lunar food system. And so the international partnership element's a critical aspect, and we hope that the Deep Space Food Challenge will help position Canada to start developing some of the technologies that we could eventually contribute to a lunar surface food production system as an initial step. Next slide, please, Aaron. So going further, if we step back in terms of actually asking ourselves, why are we doing the Deep Space Food Challenge? Well, first of all, food is a critical component for human space exploration missions, just as it is for us to have nutritious food on our dinner plate each day. It's going to be critical for keeping our astronauts healthy on these missions. Right now, on the International Space Station, astronauts typically spend 6 months. The ISS is pretty close to Earth, so resupply is pretty easy. But as those missions extend in duration and move further and further from Earth, in situ food production or food production systems that are actually going to provide fresh food for those crews on those missions will provide significant benefit. And that's even more important at this stage, because there is more and more international consensus around going back to the lunar surface, and in this case, sustainable presence on the lunar surface. You can imagine longer duration missions on the lunar surface, and in all to prepare for human missions to Mars as well, which typical mission architectures include a mission of about 3 years in duration. So food becomes even more important as we venture further from Earth with our astronaut crews. Next, please. Thanks, Aaron. So if we are looking at the actual critical elements to what could be considered space food systems, some of them are, have overlap with some of the critical elements for terrestrial food systems. But if we start on the top right-hand corner, and all of these elements, we also tie into the actual assessment criteria that are laid out in the Deep Space Food Challenge. But nutrition is a critical element, and we're going to have to keep our astronauts healthy on those missions. So making sure we're providing them with nutritious food. Usability is important. Of course, we don't want our astronauts spending 12 hours a day operating the food system just to feed themselves. We want them out there doing the science that the missions are driven by. There's inputs and outputs. Of course, a space mission does not have unlimited power, does not have unlimited water. And so minimizing the inputs to maximize the actual outputs that you get from the system are important. Reliability, our astronauts depend on these systems to survive, so they got to be reliable. A variety of food to keep our astronauts sort of mentally fit over those missions is important. Eating, protein bars nonstop for 3 years can be probably make for a pretty long mission. Palatability is important. Stability as well. It's known that even some of the foods that are used presently in space, some of the nutritional content will go down, or other food qualities will go down over time. And so we're looking at solutions that can help alleviate those issues. And finally, safety is, of course, a big one, as the crews are going to depend on these foodstuffs for their mission. So we want to make sure they're safe. So those are all the space aspects, but I'll transfer over to Matt that can touch on some of the terrestrial aspects and the overlap there.
Thanks, Matt. So to follow up on Matt's comment about the critical elements to consider in order to bring good and reliable food system in space. So we know that benefits on Earth are very important at the CSA, and it's obviously the case also for the challenge. Food is important in space. Of course, it defines how far we can explore, but so we will contribute for a food system in space, but not without having some benefits on Earth. So as you know, there are here on Earth, we are facing important food security issues. Most of us are pretty fortunate here in Canada. We do have access to fresh food, but there are communities such as remote and northern communities that suffer from food insecurity. In addition of that, we are sometimes facing disasters, emergencies, or other problems that can disturb the supply chain or even disturb the food production itself. The global pandemic we are facing is an example, but there are also other issues like climate change, degradation of cultivated organic soils, and so on. There are even food deserts in big cities. So with the global population growth, all of that drives the need for innovative food production technologies that lower the cost, consume less energy and other inputs, while increasing the capacity of producing fresh and nutritious food everywhere. At the same time, some of these new solutions might even allow us to help people faster when we are facing disasters. So it is at this interface between space, like Matt explained previously, and the terrestrial sector that this challenge is focusing on. Next slide, please. So before I give the microphone back to Clelia, I would like to introduce you to the NOVIC initiative. The CSA got involved in this remarkable project that takes place in the north of the Arctic Circle in the small community of Johaven. The name of the project means growing place in Inuktitut. It was initiated recently by the Arctic Research Foundation with the community of Johaven. They have converted shipping containers into a green energy food production growing pod and a research station. This is amazing. So with the Arctic Research Foundation, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and the National Research Council Canada, we are working on solutions to help fight food insecurity in remote communities and harsh environments in a co-creation partnership with the community. And the reason why we wanted to share that great initiative with you is because we hope that innovative food production technologies be tested there in NOVIC and one day fly in space. So thanks, and back to Clelia.
Thank you, Mathieu. So back to the challenge, and I'd like to take you specifically to the challenge statement and the real goal of what we're hoping to do with this challenge. So we're hoping to create novel food production technologies or systems that require minimal inputs and maximize safe, nutritious, and palatable food outputs for long duration space missions, and which have potential to benefit people on Earth. So as both Matt said, the junction of space and Earth is really what we're interested in. What you have to know is you don't have to build the full system in the sense that it doesn't have to fulfill the entire nutritional needs of the astronauts, but it can be integrated into a larger food system. For Canada, there are 3 phases. Phase 1 is the one that we are currently in, where you have to submit a design report, and for which the deadline is on July 30th. My colleagues from Zone Agtech and Bioenterprise will get back to the different webinars and opportunities that we have for you planned throughout phase 1. By the end of phase one, we'll announce up to 10 semifinalists that will be awarded $30,000 each. Then there will be a phase two, which is a kitchen demonstration, and we'll be looking at the technology readiness level of 4. So a prototype, and that will last until the summer 2022, where we'll announce about up to 4 finalists that will share $400,000 in 4, so $100,000 each. Then the phase 3, which is a full system demonstration, will be lasting until about the spring of 2024, and there will be one winner with a prize of $380,000. So now I want to take a bit of time to zoom in on what Zone Agtech and Bioenterprise are doing, because the reason we're working with them is that we believe that for Canadian teams to be strong, there's a strong opportunity to actually connect different companies that might be complementary, because the outcome of the challenge, and one thing we're looking for is in more subsequent phases like phase 2 and 3, is to actually test some and taste and test some food products. So we strongly believe that there could be some beautiful collaborations to be born between different Canadian innovators. And this is why we're working with Zone Agtech and Bioenterprise. So I will pass it back to you, Erin, for the presentations, and then I'll go into more details of the challenge.
Sure. I think we're going to start with Olivier over at Zone Agtech. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aaron. So Zone Agtech is really your Quebec one-stop shop for everything that's agtech innovation and also bioproducts. So it's one of the first, if not the first, world-class innovation zone in agtech and bioproducts. And we really try to offer all the best levers possible for growth acceleration, both Quebec-based and internationally. So the way this translates is 2 things. First, it's a physical zone, and secondly, it's a community. So the physical zone is located in the Greater Montreal metropolitan area, and it's a 15 square kilometer zone that's being developed right now. You can see a picture of what it will look like fairly shortly. That includes a 3 million square feet industrial land, incubator space, accelerator space, farming land, and experimental plots and greenhouses. In terms of levers, we really have access to financing. So directly in Zone Agtech, you can get up to $250,000 in loans for your commercializations. We have over 10 financial partners that are there to support your financial montage, and a lot of funding support. We have a lot of strategic support as well. So personalized consulting services, acceleration programs, which we are doing also in collaboration with Bioenterprise. We have innovation and funding, and a lot of structuring of projects for the industry, be it energy sectors, greenhouses, greenhouse productions, and every and all vertically integrated projects you could have. We are there to support. We also have a huge knowledge base and talents with more than 15 research organizations that totalize over 24 very niche and precise expertise, and more than 5 educational institutes with the best universities for agtech development. A lot of market access too. We have more than 2,500 food producers that are there to either test or implement or develop agtechs with yourselves. And we also have 5 international corridors. So we have links with Silicon Valley, United States, 39 North, also in Missouri. And we have links with France, Netherlands, Morocco, and Brazil as well for your international deployment. And last and not least, we are now a community of well over 175 members and partners of all areas of expertise in agtech and bioproducts. We do more than 30 activities a year to facilitate your deployment, and we have major agtech conferences in Quebec. So it makes a lot of sense for us to partner up with CSA and also Bioenterprise to facilitate this challenge, and we'll be there every step of the way for you to find your expertise and develop it properly. Back to you, Erin. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks so much, Olivier. I'll try to follow without repeating too much of what you said, but that's some excellent context for your organization. Thanks for that. Now I get to have the fun challenge of describing an entire organization in just a couple of minutes. Let's see how I can do. So Bioenterprise, we'll say, is Canada's food and agri-tech engine. But what does that mean? That means that we are ensuring that all of the moving parts of the agricultural ecosystem are working together to drive growth for agribusinesses. We're making sure all pistons are firing, delivering turbocharged pathways to new markets and funding streams. And we're gearing up our global presence with sector-specific, experience-based expertise. But wordplay aside, we operate in two primary capacities. First, the engine is a network full of like-minded businesses and expert service providers that address all of the common barriers agri, bio, clean, and food tech companies face when scaling. We're talking about talent acquisition, IP and regulatory support, investment in revenue streams, access to public programs for support and financing, B2B collaboration, and actually making those sales. Beyond that, we're also an accelerator, offering your internal team mentorship and coaching to increase your own capacity and competence in leading not only your company, but leading global innovation trends by targeting your funds and resources to the right paths at the right time. We can do this because of our own experienced team of executives and professionals that have been successfully guiding agricultural growth for more than 15 years. Members of the engine will grow with confidence, knowing that they have the right knowledge and support behind them from the moment they leave the starting line to that checkered flag of national excellence. We're offering funding and coaching support programs in nearly every province nationally, with each region represented by seasoned industry experts and ecosystem partnerships like the one we have with Zone Agtech. And that's going to ensure that all possible resources are brought to the table, regardless of your location or size. If you want to learn more about the engine in your region, or if you have a critical service for scaling up Canadian businesses and you want to get it in front of our membership, you can contact us at any time at Canada's Food and Agri-Tech Engine at bioenterprise.ca and start steering your innovative agribusiness towards growth. This particular collaboration with Zone Agtech and the CSA is absolutely critical to our mandate to support world-leading Canadian innovation in food and agricultural technologies. When we were approached by the Canadian Space Agency, we knew that agriculture was being recognized as the priority area of innovation and technological development that we knew it to be. CSA needed industry-level knowledge of where these technologies were being developed, who had the know-how to apply them to these new and dynamic challenges, and also how to reach them. A partnership between Bioenterprise and Zone Agtech was the perfect solution to bring ag to the CSA's front doorstep and to those companies' first step towards a brand new market beyond the global scale. We're excited for this, not only because of the technologies we can foster and the recognition of food and agri-tech as a critical point of national excellence, but because this forward-facing and, let's be honest, super cool kind of initiative represents a new era of food innovation, and we couldn't be happier to stand beside these leading partners to make it a reality. And with that in mind, I think we can talk about some of the important dates. So this challenge is obviously really exciting and very important to all of the organizations involved. We did launch this challenge on January 12th, and here we are, February 23rd in the launch webinar. Crazy to think we're already 2 months into the new year, almost at the end of it. Now, the next webinar coming up is going to be our networking webinar. And I want to speak a little bit about that. I know it's been talked about, but this is really where different companies can come together and form a larger collaborative solution that'll strengthen the quality of their proposal and also encourage those collaborative approaches to the food space challenge. We will be sending out registration links to all attendees of the current webinar today, and you can find more information as it becomes available on the Impact Canada website. As noted before, the application deadline is July 30th, and we're moving rapidly towards that date, which is why we're so excited to speak about this. And as we said, some of the semifinalists can be announced in September, and that's really just the first phase of this exciting initiative. So with a few more details, I'll pass it back to Clelia to speak a bit more about that.
Thank you, Aaron. So yes, now let's dive into eligibility and who can apply, because this is one of the questions we get the most. So every Canadian can apply, or if you're based in Canada, you can apply to whether you're an organization, for-profit, nonprofit, university, and even individuals and groups of individuals are invited to apply. But in order to be eligible to receive prizes, you'll just have to make sure that you register as a Canadian legal entity that is capable of entering into binding agreements with Canada. So that's a complicated way to say a business or a non-for-profit. So you just have to incorporate. And there's more information on that on the website. If you can go to the next slide, please. In terms of next steps, what we encourage you to do is, one, if you haven't done so yet, register your interest on the challenge website. So if you go to deepspacefoodchallenge.org, you can choose your region. Once you're on the Canadian website, there is an online form called registration of interest where you can enter some information. Some are basic information, and the last question actually prompts you with a box where you can tell us more about potential needs of other participants you might want to meet or complementary expertise you might want on your team. Second step, which is linked, oh no, sorry, previous slide. Second step, which is also linked to what I just said, is to actually form your team. So you can identify team members and designate a team leader, which will be the point of contact with us in the application form. And if you're looking for other members to join your team, there's a few different options that as we just talked about. The LinkedIn group, as you see here, is one of them. But you can also join the webinar next month to meet Canadian participants. You will have to submit your design before the July 30th deadline, and this is done via the application form, which is also on the Impact Canada website. Next slide, please. In terms of your submission, we're asking you for phase 1 to submit a concept design, and that includes 4 main questions or elements. The first one is a design abstract, which is a short summary description of your food production technology. You can treat it as your pitch. So this really should make the judges want to read more, and we encourage you to make it engaging and interesting. Then you have a design report, which actually follows the criteria, the assessment criteria, and it will prompt you with different questions, which I'll get back to a second on the assessment criteria, but it will be a very detailed questionnaire asking you a lot of questions about your technology. Then you will have to make a design animation, which is your opportunity to show how the food production technology works when it's in operation. This should be no longer than 5 minutes in length and should include setup, operations from a user perspective, inputs, outputs, shutdown, and cleaning. But bear in mind that this is just an animation and a simulation. It doesn't have to be the actual technology in operation, because this phase 1 is just a design report that we're asking. Finally, we'll ask you to submit information on the intellectual property. And this is just an explanation of who owns the intellectual property of the proposed food production technology. So for example, if teams are building an off-the-shelf technology, they must include a detail on the permissions they have to use that technology. One thing that's important to note is that the application form, the online application form, is the only way that a design concept will be accepted and reviewed by the challenge judges. And in order to maintain the integrity of the challenge and in fairness to all the teams, the subject matter experts will not engage or respond directly if they are contacted directly. So if I go back to the design report for just 1 second, I wanted to highlight some of the assessment criteria, which I believe Emily is going to post a link to the websites for you to have more details. But what we're looking for is a food production technology that's innovative, novel, and sustainable, with a feasible scenario for the potential technical use of the solution within terrestrial food systems. So your vision on how it can be helpful for both terrestrial systems as well as space is important to us and will be evaluated. We'll also look at the scientific, technical merit and the feasibility of your design. And in terms of more technical criteria, we'll be looking at the acceptability, the safety, the resource outputs and inputs, and the nutritional quality, as well as reliability and stability. So these that I just named, we're looking both at the food production system itself and the food outputs. This is it for some basic information about the challenge. I will pass it back to Aaron to moderate the time for questions now.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Clelia. All right, now comes the time where you get to take all the context you've gathered over the last 45 minutes and put your questions to our panel of experts. before I reintroduce them, remember that you can use the chat box to input questions, and we have our team on the back end feeding them to me to ask our panel. Please keep all questions in the general chat as best you can. Just a reminder, we're not going to be able to discuss specific team viability or very specific technology specs. We're looking at program goals and eligibility. We do have the second webinar coming up as per the important date slide where networking and in-depth planning can take place. So make sure you register for that event as well. Any questions that we don't get to here, I mean, 15 minutes sure flies by when you're speaking with passionate experts like the ones we have today. Those can be addressed individually and made available on the Impact Canada page along with this recording using the same documentary we talked about before. So the process of getting all these questions answered in writing, that can take, up to 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the volume of questions and the experts we consult to answer them comprehensively. So just please be a little patient there. Now let's move into some introductions and reintroductions. All right, so a few familiar names here and a few new ones. So with us today, we have Matthew Bamsey, again, a senior engineer from the CSA, Mathieu Tremblay, exploration scientist from CSA. We have Thomas Graham, an assistant professor from the School of Environmental Sciences at the University of Guelph. Sean Clark, who's a research officer of aquatic and crop resource development from the National Research Council of Canada. And Leanne Wilson, our Northern Agriculture Lead of Science and Technology of the Science and Technology branch from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. So welcome, everyone. We're going to start with a few of our predetermined questions while our team organizes the rest of the incoming questions in the back end. So let me just pull those up, and we'll start with a couple of general questions here. So scrolling down. Sorry, guys.
I'm sending them to you directly on the chat.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start by just asking, can you please describe the technology readiness level required in more detail? Is this just a paper exercise, or is there any prototyping required?
Thanks. So yeah, for the phase 1 of the challenge, we require only teams to design a novel food production technology concept and provide a detailed explanation on how it meets the challenge goal and performance criteria. So it is only for phase 2 that we will require teams to build a food production technology prototype equivalent to a TRL of 4. For US and non-Canadian international teams, the initiation of phase 2 is contingent to the emergence of promising submissions in phase 1 that show a viable approach to achieving the challenge goal. Thanks.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Now, according to the operational constraints in the constraints table, all solutions should be designed for Earth gravity. Aren't the solutions supposed to be designed for space or microgravity? And could you expand on the reason for this constraint just a little bit? Maybe we can direct this one towards Matt.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, that's a great question. One that's an important one, of course. We're looking for solutions that would be applicable in any of the environments, whether it be a planetary surface, a microgravity environment, but considering the fact that obviously testing in microgravity on Earth is expensive and difficult, the challenge has been set up that we will operate in a 1G environment. Of course, if teams can elucidate or elaborate on how their solution would operate in microgravity, so the better. But I think we're mainly focused on planetary surface environments and the fact that we definitely want these technologies to have direct terrestrial benefit. And so that simplifies things a bit there. So keep the microgravity environment in mind, but focus on operation in 1G.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you for that. And kind of one more of our anticipated questions here before I start feeding some from the live chat. Are there any specific system integration requirements that should be considered? For example, incoming power, water supply, water quantity, or those types of things?
Again, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, we're definitely focused on looking for new and novel, innovative solutions here. So we don't want to bog down the process with too many space requirements here. So yes, of course, any system that's going to operate, especially in a human environment, such as the International Space Station, or where we're going to have crews, has significant, constraints on safety, constraints on energy use, many constraints, but we're very much just focused on simplifying that as much as possible. So there is a constraints table in the applicant guide which will set sort of the top level constraints, focus on those. And as phase 2 and phase 3 sort of evolve, we can tie in a little bit more on the real space constraints. But again, we want to push innovation here. We don't want to slow things down by all the space requirements there.
Right, we'll keep our feet on the ground for now. All right, well, thank you so much for that. Now, I did allude to this recording and some other important information being available, but Clelia, could you maybe elaborate a bit on where people can find more information after the webinar today?
Yes, absolutely. So if they're registered or we have the email through registration here, we'll send information as soon as it's available. We need to allow for about 2-3 weeks just to make sure that we have everything online, the transcripts, etc. But there will be a webinar page posted on the challenge page on Impact Canada. So it will be located in the important resource section, which is a blue box at the bottom of the Impact Canada challenge page.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. And clearly, again, could you clarify maybe the terms of reference for the prize funding? You know, there's questions on whether it's to be a grant, a contract, or something else, as there are implications related to university administrations and the assessment of indirect costs up to 40%.
Yes, thank you. So the kind of agreements that will be put in place is a grant agreement. But one thing that you need to bear in mind is that unlike traditional government funding, this is outcomes-based funding. So the concept of a challenge prize is that we're rewarding based on the results of what we see for the phase and not based on what you say you will do for a future work. So we'll really be evaluating what we see at the end of phase 1 and then providing a grant agreement and writing the terms in, with the semi-finalists once they have been determined. But there's no question of looking at indirect costs, etc. It's really based on results.
Right. And given the breadth of expertise coming out of many of the post-secondary institutions that I know Zone Agtech and Bioenterprise are partnered with, is there a limit on the number of applications that a post-secondary institution itself can be a part of? If they have 2 faculty who are part of different applications, or maybe a single faculty member who's an expert on multiple applications?
No, this is not a problem. And for universities, what's important to bear in mind is either a team applies under the name of the university, in which case the duly authorized representative has to be aware of it. So sometimes it's a VP research of the university. It's ultimately the person that will be signing the grant agreement. So you just need to ensure that the hierarchy in your university is aware of these applications if you're applying in the name of the university. Teams also have the opportunity, if they want to be more of a spin-off, to create their own organization. But that is really up to the participants to decide how they wish to apply and under which organization.
Excellent. And then I think one more general eligibility one for you, Clelia, if I can't let you go yet. If I come from outside of Canada and I join a Canadian team, would all of us be eligible for the different prizes of the competition?
So the way it works is that when you sign up as a team, what we're looking at is that the organization that will be receiving the funds is a eligible beneficiary, so which means a Canadian legal entity. So it is possible that a Canadian team has a non-Canadian participant in the team, as long as the organization that we're dealing with is capable of entering into binding agreements with Canada.
Okay.
I hope that answers the questions clearly.
Excellent. It seems like some great information. All right, Matt.
And I'll just add quickly for this one, just because it's also a question we get often. It's the same with underage participants. You don't necessarily have to be 18 to participate as an individual, but what we require is for the organization to be a Canadian legal entity.
Excellent. All right, good clarification. Matt, if I can pull you back in here for a second, can you elaborate on the size requirements for the system?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, if I guess on the top level, there is the constraints table in the applicant guide that should serve as your reference point. But of course, we don't have unlimited space in space vehicles. And so, and of course, for the prototyping phase, which would be phase 2 and phase 3, we don't want these food production technologies taking up a huge high bay. So there is a constraint on the actual prototype will need to be less than 2 meters cubed is one thing. And there's a requirement on it as well, fitting through a certain door size, and that is listed in the applicant guide, but it is 1.07 meters wide and 1.9 meters tall. And that sort of, to some degree, gets us thinking about moving hardware through space hatches and what have you. So those are the sort of top level size requirements there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that clarification. All really useful information. While I have you here, what research data on plants in space can we access, and where can we find a resource, Matt?
Yeah, and that's one thing I think many people here understand. This is very much a multidisciplinary challenge. It requires some biology, requires some engineering expertise to have a successful solution in the challenge. On the Canadian side, we have posted a list of references that we've worked with our NASA colleagues, and that can be found on the Impact Canada website. So that does give a start. We'll be lengthening that reference list as time goes by over the course of the challenge as well. But I think also it's these webinars, especially the upcoming networking webinar, as well as the joint NASA and CSA webinar that is forthcoming, where more information will be shared and more perspective will be shared. So more information to come, but yep, it's a tough field in terms of understanding all the ins and outs.
Yeah, we're definitely excited to share in that expertise sharing too. Very excited about the upcoming webinar as well. Back to you, Clelia. Can you repeat the preferences around collaborative multiple company entries versus just a single company entry?
Yes, thank you. So for that one, what you have to remember at the end of the day, there's one primary contact for the team and one organization that will enter into agreements with the Canadian Space Agency. What we recommend is that pulling different expertise together can make for a stronger team. So when you have multiple organizations coming into the challenge together, you still form one team, and in our eyes, it would be one team with one primary contact. So that would have to be arranged amongst you. But one thing to remember is that we're not competing against international and the US, but we'll be comparing the entries with the entries coming into the US. And as being a smaller country, I think pulling our resources together and making sure that we can bring complementary companies to build the strongest solutions together rather than each competing separately is an interesting concept to pursue. But this is on the owners of teams to decide how they will do it.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I think collaboration is something that's very important to Canadian agriculture in general, and the entire ecosystem really working together is a big part of our strength. So yeah, I definitely think there are some interesting possibilities there. Matt, can you just speak to whether we can use technologies that have not yet been demonstrated?
Certainly, I think that's what we're looking for, new ideas. And remember, phase one is conceptual, and a design report is required. So for sure, those are exactly the type of ideas that we're looking for. New ideas that are going to be game changer, as well as ideas that are going to stack on and increase efficiency over current systems. So yes, bring the good ideas, please.
Perfect. Thanks for that. I'm going to keep you on the spot for a minute here. So do solutions need to produce fully prepared food items, or would ingredients or basic food sources, such as say raw fruits or vegetables, be considered a successful output?
Yeah, I think for sure raw vegetables, raw fruit would be a successful output. It depends in both cases. What's going to happen in phase two is the food output will be tested for example, accessibility or acceptability, and there'll be a sensory analysis done on the food to see, is it up to snuff? Is the nutritional content high? But for sure, I think what we're looking for as well is being able to produce food that is fresh for the crew when they eat them. So yes, certainly vegetables and fruits fit that game, but also if there are solutions that are going one step further to produce and process some of that food, that's also acceptable. So good ideas in both those fronts.
Excellent. Yeah, some real diversity of opportunity there. Now, if this is a project that has already been underway, there's already been research and development that's attached to it. Is that a positive for this project again, to Matt, or how does that work with your evaluation?
Sure, I can start there. I think that can help demonstrate the the feasibility of the design. If some work in this area has obviously been done, that gives an advantage in some instances. And so, yes, for sure, if there's work done in a certain area, please also bring it to the table, because we're looking for things that are feasible but also innovative. So it's always that fine balance there. But for sure, if there's work in an area that's been done, yep, it's absolutely applicable.
Excellent. And another one here, for safety requirements that we spoke about, is there a specific acceptance metric that the challenge is looking for to show compliance?
Yes, so there's a few, I guess, subsets of that one. There's both safety of the hardware itself. So again, if our crews are using the hardware on a mission, we want that hardware to be safe because the crew depends on it. And secondly, yes, the food outputs need to be safe as well. So there's a first requirement on, minimizing or having essentially no pathogens. So that's one that's well documented in the applicant guide. And we are in the process of working even more on the prototypes will be developed, how those safety requirements will feed in. But for now, the metrics that are listed in the applicant guide, as well as one of the references that are quoted there, are the go-to documents.
Excellent, thanks for that. Now here's an interesting little either-or comparison for you. In the battle of yield versus taste, what wins out for you? If we took something along the lines of 10 kilograms a week of super efficient protein paste, or 500 grams of strawberries, but only twice a year. How do you evaluate that when you're looking at applicants for the challenge?
Yeah, maybe I can start with that one, Aaron. I think we're looking for good ideas for now. There we're still in with respect to phase 2 and the design with our NASA colleagues, and how specifically we're going to weigh those. You can see, for example, in the applicant guide, there is a table with respect to the assessment criteria that Claudia made mention to before, with a weighing factor at this particular phase for phase 1. And the food quality element is one element. And there's other aspects that sort of go the other direction in terms of quality versus nutrition. If we're pumping out lettuce on one solution, on the other solution, we're producing something that is much higher nutritional value. Of course, there's a big difference there. And then those also factor into the resource inputs and outputs assessment criteria. So for the actual prototyping phase, the weighting factors are not yet fully described or determined, but we will still use the same assessment criteria as Claudia mentioned throughout the entire phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of the challenge. So that's where we are.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think just to reiterate a message I keep hearing from you, Matt, is this is an ideas phase. We really want to hear what people are working on, what kinds of innovations they can bring to this challenge, and a wide breadth of ideas is really going to benefit everyone here. So I think that's a really great message to just keep blasting out there.
And I think it comes back to the comments made earlier that this is CSA's first challenge from this regard. We're very pleased to be working with the NASA Centennial Challenge Program and Impact Canada, and using a new mechanism to get out some of those great ideas as well. So, yep, right on.
Yeah, absolutely a great initiative being undertaken here. Clearly, if I can return back to you for a moment, someone had asked, as an Italian entity participating as an international team, besides not being able to challenge for the prize, would they not be able to eventually go to phase 2? Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
So I think it was mentioned briefly earlier, but for the time being, NASA has committed to only phase 1, and they're leading the work with the international teams. So if the results are satisfying for phase 1, they will be looking into potentially opening a phase 2. For us, it is already something that we've committed to, because it is part of the Impact Canada Challenge model to have a 3-phase challenge. So this is what has been announced for now, but I would say just stay posted, keep posted, and look at the information that is sent by NASA and the Methuselah Foundation for that.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. Okay, so being cognizant of time, I would say, again, any questions we can't get to today, we are going to respond to in writing where possible. So this is your chance right now. Make sure you get those last minute questions in chat. I think we potentially have time for one or two more if there's anything else that the team wants me to address here. Okay, so here we go. Just a question that just came in. How much can we assume regarding the ingredient inputs to our system? Sorry, how much assumption can we make regarding the ingredient inputs to our systems? I'm thinking here of a system which assumes that the basic primary ingredients are available for further processing. So I think that would be to Matt.
Sure. On this front, yeah, anything can be used from input ingredients to the system. Those will be accounted for in this sort of input-output calculation. So yes, you can make assumptions that you can have some resources available, and in the end, it comes down to the fact that you know, we don't want to be launching 1,000 kilograms of material just to produce 25 kilograms of lettuce, for example. So it's the story's got to make sense there. But of course, if you need input ingredients, seeds, or you know, nutrients, yes, you can make assumptions that those will be provided on the actual mission, so your system can work.
Excellent, thank you for that. Okay, so I think given time, let's shift to that final slide. I think there's a few housekeeping details we can just review. Make sure to note any information you'd like to take down. It's all listed here, a lot of the things that we covered. That's our time for today. So, you know, just you can register your interest. This is a really great way to get an early idea of what your project involves. Stay connected at the deepspacefoodchallenge.org. We have a newsletter. We have social media. You can register for the additional webinars. You can even join our LinkedIn group. Again, here are the emails if you have any questions that didn't get addressed today. And again, we will have that sending you a registration link for that follow-up networking webinar that's going to bring things back around. But that's our time for today. I'd like to thank all of our speakers and our experts for being here today to help us introduce the challenge and answer questions regarding, you know, how exciting everything is. I do, again, encourage everyone to register for the upcoming webinar, and don't hesitate to reach out to our teams to find out how you can get involved. And thanks for joining us today as we help you connect, innovate, and grow in space. Really appreciate it, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.